But I believe it's really time for impact companies and clean energy companies to go public more. So to have more IPOs. In the B2B space, you can only test so much because your sample size is limited. So you have to go for 2 or 3 setups, and those have to somehow come from your experience and your view of the market, because you won't be able to test all these variables individually. It's just, you can't ask enough people and you lose your customer base. If you have Slack or if you have Zoom, why does it work? Well, because the internet cables are there and everybody has a computer. That's the precondition. If it wasn't there, somebody has to bring it there. And then you can come with Zoom, and then you can come with Slack. But it first has to be brought there. And when you talk about the energy transition and you talk about distributed energy, like solar and battery and so on, in multifamily housings, it's just not there yet. So if you then come up with a software as a service solution, you can do a few things. But at the end of the day, the challenge for these companies, real estate companies, and also homeowners today is putting those technologies in the buildings. And they need somebody to help them all the way. And part of that all the way means somebody has to go to these buildings and check out what's in the basement. Somebody has to install something, and hardware has to be bought. And so at the end of the day, the solution is always a mix of software, hardware, services to make it a reality. Doesn't mean you have to do everything on your own. I think that's a big error. We also started doing way too much on our own, which we then cannot develop to quality. But you need to work in partnerships, and you have to have an ecosystem that at the end of the day solves the total problem.
Bonjour, and welcome to Mission First, the podcast to get inspired and to learn from successful entrepreneurs who are building a sustainable future for our planet and its people. I am Gilles Toussaint, your host and the founder of GT Impact, a growth and digital marketing agency working only with companies making a positive difference in this world. Growing a company that aims at having a sustainable impact is not easy. That's why I created Mission First. In each episode, I interview one entrepreneur who has a sustainable mission and who has recently gone through the difficult first years successfully. Together, we discuss their challenges and what they have learned on the way. We go into detail with a specific focus on company culture, leadership, financing, growth, and business strategy. That way, you'll learn hands-on tips on how to build a better future and a successful company too. Being an entrepreneur in the energy industry is a tough challenge. The market is very broad, the sales cycle and the product implementation are very long. Products are usually a mix of hardware and software, so it's very difficult to be a successful entrepreneur in that sector. That's why I'm really excited to talk today to Ernesto Garnier, the CEO of EINHUNDERT. After less than 4 years, they already make a 7-digit revenue. They offer a 100% sustainable energy solution and help real estate companies become solar power suppliers for their residents. Ernesto is also a member of Leaders for Climate Action, so I know he really cares about having a positive impact with his company. In this episode, Ernesto will share a list of 6 do's and don'ts on the topic of how to optimize and develop a new energy solution in the B2B real estate market. This includes tips about how to pin down your ideal customer, how to develop and design your software and hardware solution, or how to develop your partnerships. Can you relate to that? Then let's dive into this conversation together. Ernesto, thank you very much for being here with us today. How are you?
Hi, it's very good to talk to you. Thanks a lot for the invitation. It's Corona times, it's not easy, but I'm doing fine. Thanks a lot.
Yes, and frohes neues Jahr and Happy New Year, as we say in Germany.
Same to you.
So, Ernesto, tell me, you are the founder of, do I pronounce it correctly, EINHUNDERT Energie?
Exactly. So EINHUNDERT as the number 100, EINHUNDERT, and then it's Energie. So that's how the company's name is. But by the time actually we are launching this podcast, we will have reduced it to EINHUNDERT. So the Energie is a given. And actually, our new website will be under the label einhundert.de.
So your brand is established enough now that you can skip that part.
Well, I'd like to think of it that way. I'm not so sure if it's true, but we really like the word EINHUNDERT. We find it elegant. And indeed, in the real estate sector, we believe we're fine enough to work with that name only.
That's great. Like, I mean, I wish, like, I wish you to be like Apple. With like, at some point, I think they started with Apple computers, and then they switched to Apple.
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean, you have these great notion of category leaders like Tempo, with the tissues and all of this stuff. So of course, that's a far way to go. But we're operating in a fairly specific segment. So we're trying to work with our EINHUNDERT name.
Tempo is a funny thing, right? Like, because it's funny how in different countries, different. Like people use different brands. So, for example, here, like in Belgium, and in French, you would never say a Tempo for a tissue, but we would use some words like, I don't know, I would always say a Kawe, like for a wind jacket.
Okay, yeah.
Which I don't hear here.
Sometimes you have also these global brands, they use different names in different countries. Actually, it's funny because also some investors, they say, when you go to another country, you cannot be EINHUNDERT. Whereas you have companies like Sonnen, right, who also have like at least a German word, I guess. But yeah, at least for Germany, EINHUNDERT, that's the name, and it works so far. Yeah.
That's great. So tell me a bit about the company. Like, can you summarize a bit what you do? I've tried to explain it in the introduction, but you can probably explain that way better than I do. So what exactly do you do and do you offer?
Well, if you had to put it short, I would say that we help real estate companies become solar power suppliers for their residents. So, I mean, we have a technology, a software core, and on top of the software, certain service processes, which we use to make solar supply from the roof in multifamily housings a reality for tenants all across Germany. So instead of having to source your electricity from the grid as a normal energy consumer, you can just turn to your landlord and he has a solar power supply for you from the roof. And that's what we do. We work together with real estate companies, make deals with them so that we can roll out our solar power solution in their portfolios. And at the core of what we do is software and a scalable workflow architecture.
Okay, so you are B2B in that case. You work with a real estate company, not directly with a tenant who can ask you to install the solar panels.
Exactly. And it's also, I mean, if we talk about the journey, we might touch upon that as well. But we have become more and more B2B. So our focus is on winning real estate companies who have a lot of buildings, work together with them. And then the part of getting the electricity, the solar power to the tenants is something that we can help with, but that is more and more done by the real estate companies themselves.
Okay. And do you have a specific mission when you talk about the company's mission itself?
Yeah, I mean, so at the larger scale, if you look at our team and also, of course, myself and my co-founder, we are definitely driven by the deep motivation to contribute to fighting climate change. And for us, it means contributing to a CO2 neutral building stocks. So because buildings are among the biggest CO2 emitters, the heating and the electricity that people and companies need in buildings. And our vision is to help mitigate that and make clean energy supply for real estate and for buildings a reality. And on the mission level, so what we look at, we look at ourselves as a digital service partner for real estate companies to make that a reality on the electricity side.
Okay. And in terms of stage right now, so you work you said that you found product market fit and you are on the scaling phase right now, on the growth phase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of definitions and a lot of views on where is somebody when. So I don't have a VC background. Of course, we're working a lot with VCs and investors who are extremely familiar with these terms. But I think generally you can say what has happened is we have by now understood what really is the need for a real estate company and more specifically for a landlord company, so a company that is renting out apartments. We have understood what is the pain point for them when they try to roll out solar power supply in their portfolios. And we have fine-tuned our product to really cater to these pain points. And that's what we definitely see in terms of real estate companies referring us to each other, inbound demand, new accounts coming up at quite a high frequency, and that's where we are right now. And so the main challenge now is to to go more outside as well, more outbound on the one hand, and to not only count on, referrals and that, but also, having a more aggressive go-to-market if you want, and to onboard even more accounts. And of course, then at the end of the day, and I think we will talk about this more, it's about delivery as well, because what we do is fairly complex. It is a lot of software, but it's not only software. Stuff has to be installed in the buildings. And so scaling that to the next level where we can not only onboard like 100 buildings like we did last year roughly, but actually onboard maybe 500 or 1,000 buildings in a year without losing on quality. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, how many buildings or clients can do you have in total right now on the past 4 years?
Yeah, so when we win a customer, a real estate company, we work with them long term, because in every building that we operate for at least 8 years. And so by now we have about 200 buildings connected to our platform. This means 200 buildings that either have a solar system on the roof or a CHP, so a combined heat and power system in the basement. So these are two types of how you produce electricity in the building. And we have smart meters, for the production and all the users. So we have them connected via smart meters to our platform. It's about 200 buildings, about 2,000 households that are users in those buildings. And I think I would have to rethink now. We should be in a range of 25 real estate companies that are behind this as our partners.
Okay. And talking about numbers while we are at it. So your company size right now, you have 23 full-time employees.
Yeah, it's going by one now. 24, I think. We work a bit with part-time as well. So if you look at the people, there's just over 30 people, but we really embrace part-time work. We work with young talents also from the universities, but also with people who are parents like myself. So the headcount is a bit bigger than the full-time equivalent.
Oh, I want to get back to that when you said you really embrace part-time workers, because I think it's a very important thing too. And me growing my company is something I'm interesting to know how you deal with that.
Yeah.
Talking about revenue, you told me you are in a 7-digit range revenue. What about the funding? How was it for you so far? Are you already profitable?
No, we're not profitable. It's still a bit of a path to go. It's quite a big undertaking because our company, and I think that is one of the key challenges in a sector like this. We're combining quite a bit of functions. So one is IT development, and of course sales and marketing. I think this is standard for a digital company, but we also have to have operations, right? So we have to have engineers who run standard service processes to get the stuff going. And so we with 2020 we just hit the 7-digit revenue range. When it comes to the funding side, so initially it was myself and family, and then we had an angel round in 2018. Serial founders, private equity people that joined together. On top of that, we had a seed round in the fall of 2019, together with V Venture, an impact investor, a German one, and also Minol, which is a player from the sub-metering industry. And High-Rise Ventures, a prop tech angel investor from Berlin, and that's been our equity side so far. But on top of that, we decided to make a crowd round, which is a crowdfunding subordinate loan, so it's not equity, and we initiated that in the March of 2020. Which was horrible timing. I mean, you have, I think it was the beginning of the first lockdown. It was like, we were scratching our heads and thinking this wouldn't work out and expecting that not much would happen. But it's been an incredible run. And the campaign has just closed at the end of 2020. And we had a big sprint at the end of the year as well after Christmas. So we actually gathered more than €1 million now.
Oh wow! When I saw it last time, you were at 900,000. I think like a day before before New Year's Eve. I think
exactly. So it's incredible. So I think mid December. I don't recall it perfectly, but I think mid December, early December was 700,000. So it had grown steadily over the year. And yeah, people went home for Christmas, had holidays. I think a lot of people that had considered to contribute, but maybe just were too much in a rush over all this business that's to be done throughout the year. We hit the 1 million, and I think we're in a really good spot now. And yeah, I think working really hard to grow and bring this to a Series A level type of round.
How is that crowdfunding going? Because you said it's not, I know there are different types of crowdfunding, like from the private one where you pay to get something, but also for like investors. Here it's for private investment. But you said it's not equities in that case, because I know some crowdfunding platforms do that in terms of equities. And here you said it's a loan.
Exactly. So I think it's, there are different platforms, and also within platforms you can choose for different options. We decided to work with Vivin, which is also a platform which is somewhat related with one of our investors, so there's a good link here. And we decided to go for a subordinate loan. So it's a loan. People can give any type of money starting with 100 euros, and they get an interest. I think it's no secret. It was published, so that the base interest is 7% per year, which is, of course, for private investors, quite an attractive interest. And for those who signed early, they got even a bit more. And that's essentially how it works. And it's just the money is standing. We will have to pay it back, and we will pay it back. It runs over end of 24. And that's the model. And the people get interest, 7% per year, contribute to really impactful cause. And the platform we work with, that was important to us, is a platform which only endorses impact undertakings, whether it's companies or, solar projects, because we wanted to make sure that the people that invest understand what we're doing and that they also believe in it.
So actually, probably I would ask you to connect me to them, because that might be a good guest to have on our podcast.
Happy to do so.
So to understand, in that case, if it's a loan, so if I give €1,000, if I invest if I give you in that case €1,000 for that project, I have 7% interest on it until the end of 2024.
Annual interest.
You pay it back.
Yeah. So you get 70 euros on 1,000 euros, 70, I think that's correct, every year. And then you get, with the last interest payment, you also get your down payment on your initial investment.
Okay, so you get your money back plus 7% per year, at the end.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a great concept.
Yeah.
And why did you decide to go for that one, besides the fact that you were probably connected to that investor? So but why do you think, I know it's because crowdfunding also plays a major role sometimes in terms of awareness for your company, but what was the main reason for you to do that instead of just taking a loan from the bank?
Well, yeah, I think getting a loan from the bank is difficult in any case, or at least it's a very time-consuming and highly bureaucratic process. So that was never really an option. I think the options that we're looking at as a startup, which also invests in the future, so not being profitable yet, is either equity or other crowd instruments, and or at least that's the standard tools, I would say. And for us, it was the question is, if you do equity round and you get more equity money, you always have to think in terms of, you're not paying interest, but of course you're giving away shares and you're giving away also influence over your company's fate. And when you are in the space that we're in, which is renewable energy, a sustainable solution, and I think you were alluding to it also in your intro, hardware, software. So it is not a pure software as a service business. So it takes a little longer to scale it to a profitable level. You need to have a bit more investment upfront. And when you solve that entirely with equity, it might come at quite a high cost in terms of losing control over the fate of the company as well. And so for us, we felt that why would we at a certain share price, give away so many shares that we're losing control over where we're going, maybe even running the risk of not being in line with our vision at some point, being pushed into a certain direction. Why would we do that when out there, all over the world, there are so many people who want to make a contribution and also benefit from all the possibilities of the energy transition. So I think that is one of the most powerful assets that impact investors have, is to understand you're not working against everybody out there. but everybody is rooting for you because by now, fortunately, the majority of people have really understood that we need to make a change. So, you need to make use of that and bring those people on board, whether it's by contributing investments and of course having the benefit as well, or it's in some other ways of being your marketeers, referring you or whatever it is. And so that was the motivation where we said, okay, they're the better investors for our company, at least given the resources that we wanted at that point, compared to an equity investor who might push us in a direction we don't want to go in by now.
Yeah, so it was the best solution to keep the control on your company.
Yeah, at that stage. And of course, if you're in the US and you're a serial founder who has already founded 3 software as a service startups, and you're saying like one of those Apple founders now making a new company, I think even a sustainable investment company, if I'm correct, Wozniak. So if you're somebody like that, you can just run around and say, everybody give me $100 million. But in Germany, if you're starting with a more challenging, more complex business model like ours, you will have to pay quite a high price if you're raising a lot of equity early.
Yeah, and especially we are also like in a more conservative mindset in Europe and in Germany in particular.
Exactly, and that can have very high implications, over the course of the company, because you give away shares early. You will give away shares again and again because you will need more money over the time of the company. And then you're in a position where maybe you started with the idea, I want to make a difference, I want to contribute with clean energy and this and that. But then you're in a position where you're being pushed to make an exit and leave the company earlier than you wanted, maybe even to somebody who buys it that you're not really a fan of, and these kinds of things. And we really have the ambition to push this quite a bit further.
So exit is not like it's not a goal right now of the company.
It's not a goal of the company. It's a possible avenue, but we want to be able to, at least that's our goal. We want to be able to really have the liberty to make that decision, and also be selective about who that exit would be, go to. Like who would be the buyer of EINHUNDERT, who would continue EINHUNDERT. Would it really mean that the company continues to grow, that we continue this journey, or would it be more like, just being bought for a PR stunt or whatever? And I believe, I'm not saying that EINHUNDERT will be that company, but I believe it's really time for impact companies and clean energy companies to go public more. So to have more IPOs and go to stock exchange, because that is still something that clean tech companies, climate tech companies, especially in Germany, seem to struggle with quite a bit. Most of them, then they have quite an early exit. Maybe don't reach the size and the potential that they could. But how about taking it to a stock exchange at some point and having this really be a new company in the market?
Yeah, I wish you'd do that.
Let's see. Yeah, thanks.
So just because you're talking about that topic of equities, and I think it's very important, and especially like it's very critical, as you say, in the green tech sector, in the renewable energy sector.
Yeah.
So I guess if you explain that way, I hope you're still like the majority owner with your co-founder of the company.
Yes.
Without asking you numbers about that, but yeah, that's good to confirm. Do you have any advice on, challenges you had while like raising fundings, for example, with your investors, and how you negotiated, or what kind of leverage you used, for example, to, I guess you cannot say, yeah, use that leverage with that investor right now, because they're still your investor. But is there any advice you can give to the entrepreneurs out there to how they can maximize the chances to end up with a majority of the shares in the company?
Well, yes. I mean, just as a disclaimer, I think we've made a lot of learnings, and I'm happy to share some. At the same time, I would say that they're probably, let me put it differently. We also have to learn still a lot. So I think while I think we've made a number of experiences, I wouldn't look at myself as the best to have done this so far, because I'm really looking up and admiring a lot of people, especially in other sectors, other tech sectors, fintech, cybersecurity, who I think have already progressed more than the typical clean tech and climate tech founder. I think as a as a breed of people, we need to smarten up a bit when it comes to that and become a bit more bullish as well. Generally, what you have to understand, and it is still a reality, while Fridays for Future happened and everybody knows we have to fight climate change, the reality is that for the financial sector and especially the venture sector, it is still a difficult topic that they're just really warming up to. If you are a VC who has not a focus on impact or climate or clean tech, but if you're a general investor, you will always compare different investment alternatives. And if you have an alternative, which is maybe in the financial tech sector or cybersecurity tech sector or consumer tech, where this is a pure software layer, and once they crack the code, I can just plug millions into that model, and they will just grow all over the world. From the logic that a venture capital investor has, that is still a more attractive avenue than investing in a company which might in the long term have a greater value because they have long running contracts and they're really deeply embedded in a booming industry like clean tech. But you understand it will take longer. My money can not push the growth button, and I might be actually able to also invest less overall because the speed of growth is more limited. And so the reality is the set of investors for the standard climate tech model is smaller than the set of investors for others. And so I think the number one thing is focus on the right investor leads, right? And understand who really has more than just the comparison across different industries, but who is really determined to have impact and invest in the climate tech sphere. I think that's the number one. And then understand that beyond the financial trajectory, also your CO2 impact potential then becomes a very important second asset, because that's what they're looking after, right? So you can not only make money, but you can also bring down CO2, and that's a KPI for those types of investors that really want to have an impact there. And I think you need to make clear that your solution will be a relevant contribution in terms of volume of CO2 saved. And then it becomes really interesting. And then it's all about timing. That's the second part. I think you need to understand what is realistic at this point, how far is the market, and how do you position yourself in a fundraising process so that you're also positioning yourself as an opportunity for what is to come. Because everybody knows climate tech is booming and will boom a lot in the next 10 years.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. You are mentioning CO2 emissions, and that's, I think, a good point to jump on the question I wanted to ask you. When I saw that you were part of Leaders for Climate Action, so what is it exactly, and what does it mean for your company?
Yeah, so that happened last year. That we got in touch with one of the initiators of that. If you look at our team, and especially my co-founder Marcus is a main driver. There are a lot of highly convinced, highly idealistic people. It's not like an super alternative group of people, but everybody is intrinsically motivated to contribute to the energy transition, to fight climate change, and me as well. But I still come from a consulting background. I was in the airplane a couple times a week before EINHUNDERT, and I really had to make a journey where not only would I focus my work. Not only focus my work on something sustainable, which was always the motivation, but also my personal lifestyle. And Leaders for Climate Action is cool in a sense that as EINHUNDERT, what we do in terms of our product, our offering, automatically is sustainable and impact oriented. But at the same time, how about what we do in our company? How do people travel to the office? I mean, right now they're not traveling, but generally, how do we travel to client appointments? Printing, all that kind of stuff. And Leaders for Climate Action is an initiative that motivates founders and other people with impact for themselves privately at home, but also for their companies to strive towards climate neutrality, carbon neutrality. And the first step is what you have to do there is you have to do some type of auditing, a benchmarking, right? You look at your own emissions at home, but also in your company. and then you can offset it. But at the same time, offsetting only takes you so far. At the end of the day, we have to reduce, and they motivate, they network, they interconnect different founders to inspire each other how they achieve that, what you can do. So it's a really interesting network and a really cool approach to get started. And I'm extremely proud, especially of EINHUNDERT in our company, because when we did the auditing, essentially what we found out that as a company, our CO2 footprint is like 2 households. So it's extremely low because we're generally not flying at all. We're always taking a train. Almost all the people are coming by train or by bike. My co-founder, Marcus, is the driver behind us, using, for instance, used hardware. So we're not buying new hardware. We're always buying, used laptops and so on, and all that kind of stuff that actually leads to the fact that we had a really good starting point, but of course we're trying to move it to zero. And the same privately, I think if you ask my wife, she went all the way also with me on that journey. But I've really come to, to a point where, whatever you propose to others and to your customers, you have to set an example. And so we're extremely low on meat once or twice a month. We're really budgeting our flight, also private travel a lot, from especially where we came from to now, I would say 1 or 2 maybe European flights. And so all that kind of stuff is something where Leaders for Climate Action, there are now also other initiatives, Climate Partner and so on. They really help companies and privates to become aware of what is your footprint and then make suggestions of how can you move it to zero.
Okay, so that's a little bit like Plan A as well, and Lubomila Jonanova was doing that with her company.
I think the specialty about Leaders for Climate Action is they have built a lot of this network thing around it, where you have breakfasts, virtual breakfasts with all these other famous founders and so on. And
so right now it's pretty easy because you are focused on the German. Is it also the DACH market? Are you also in Austria and Switzerland? Not yet.
Germany.
Okay, Germany. But for example, now, like when you come to Berlin, you avoid, like you are based in Köln, so in Cologne.
Yeah, exactly.
And you come by train.
I do. And actually, before Corona, I was going to Berlin or Hamburg or Munich, I think once a week. I have twin daughters, so I also have kids. So I'm also trying not to travel the evening before if I don't have to. So very often you will find me in the very first train, I don't know, around 5, 6 a.m. So I'm in Berlin like 4.5, 5 hours later. I spent, I think, 2019, I spent 2 nights in the train because I didn't take the last train to get back home, and sometimes it gets stuck. So I had to spend a night outside of Berlin in Spandau because the train wasn't progressing.
So you stayed in the train?
Yeah, we had this. The Deutsche Bahn. So we had to stay in the train for one night. Actually, there was no electricity, no AC, so it was crazy. Yeah, so that's how we do it. Exactly.
But that's also. I agree. I had to change this mindset too, because I love to go far away from here because it's very nice to discover new cultures and everything. But you just realize it's not sustainable to do it at least the way
absolutely
we used to do it. Even though I was already, like, every time I was traveling was always for 3 weeks. Now I would like, if I do it next time, to do it at least for a couple of months, because that, like, then you can settle down there and your carbon footprint is not so high. But in Germany, we're pretty, like, I think lucky in a way, because with the Deutsche Bahn, I paid I think €250 to have the Deutsche Bahn like 50, so like you get 50% reduction on all, like, most of the tickets, and it's pretty handy in a way, because when you think about it, sometimes, I was discussing sometimes, why don't you take the plane? It's way faster. And actually, just even that argument is not really true, because I go to Munich. My girlfriend is from Munich, and to go to Munich, it's like 4 hours and a half with the direct train from here, and I can just leave the home, just walk 10 minutes to the station, to Südkreuz here in Berlin, take the train, and then I have 4 hours and a half when I can sit down, have even a big suitcase with me, and just work on my laptop for 4 hours and a half, and then I'm directly in Munich, and then another like an hour train, and then it's done. When you travel by plane, you think it's just 1 hour of flying, but at the end you have to arrive an hour and a half before it starts if you don't want to be in a rush, and then you're limited in terms of like a luggage, and then you have to, same thing when you come back. And door to door, I think the train for me going to even to Belgium, it's 7 hours by train when it's 5 hours by plane.
No, I completely agree. I think overall we have a good infrastructure, especially here. Like if you're in Cologne, you have not only in Germany, but you can go to Paris in 3 hours. You can go to Amsterdam in 3 hours. You can go to Brussels. So it's already good. I think they have to work a bit on the punctuality, on the topic of internet connection, because I love to work actually in the train, so it's productive working time. Sometimes I have with all these cloud-based tools, I have quite some connection problems. But overall, I think it's a very good alternative. And I'm not trying to judge too much. I mean, first of all, if you just look at my consultant time, I think I have to make up quite a bit when it comes to a flying footprint. I mean, it's absurd. I had projects in South Africa, where colleagues and also myself, sometimes we will fly every week. You fly from Frankfurt to Johannesburg and you come back. And
how many hours is that?
It's 11 hours overnight, but it's so stressful. So I think I still believe travel is important. You need to see other cultures, also to avoid, more nationalism. I think it's important that we travel, and I hope that they find better solutions for flying. I think it would be a very sad perspective to say, you're limited to a radius. So I'm hoping something happens there, and I think until then it's more about budgeting yourself to something where you say, that's fine. For me, it means in the workspace where I'm working in and around Germany, I have no problem, sacrificing some sleep hours for that. And for private, I will still maybe once a year, sometimes maybe even twice a year, fly somewhere, usually within Europe, but maybe even sometimes I have family in Haiti. My dad is from the Caribbean and family in the US. So yeah, I do want to see them every now and then. So that will happen. And I hope technology helps there.
Yeah, but I think also it's really a business. I think the business, the companies have a way bigger impact than individuals in general. So, but Corona, that's a positive side of Corona, which changed a lot of these things.
Oh, absolutely. Large difference. Yeah.
Let's move on to the topic of what I wanted to just ask you in a very in a nutshell. I always like to understand how you started the company. What were the typical challenges you had at the beginning, and especially how you went. You've done your PhD in energy economics at the same time you were working at BCG, and you started the company in 2017. So how did you go from the idea to the company corporation, that first step?
Yeah, generally I had, my topic was always energy and the energy transition. So in my studies already, I worked in London at London School of Economics. Parallel, I worked for the Climate Group, which is an NGO in London. I had done an internship at E.ON Climate and Renewables. And so I was set to work in that space. Still was highly impressed by BCG and decided to start my working career there. But from day one, it was energy and working on energy transition topics, usually also some other energy topics, but usually energy transition topics, solar, smart metering, and these kinds of topics with Germany's and other leading utilities. And in that time, I worked part-time for about 2.5 years and worked on a PhD at RWTH Aachen. And my topic was on virtual power plants, right? So on connecting different solar and wind systems and managing them together. And one of the coolest companies in that space is Next Kraftwerke, also from Cologne, which is not anymore a startup. They're really grown by now, I think 10 years old. But that was one of those inspirations for me, where I felt like, okay, maybe this work as a consultant with the large utilities, I can have some impact, but it only takes me so far, because at the end, it still has to be somehow implemented in those big corporations, and they struggle with that quite a bit, and they might have conflicting interests as well on how fast they want to change, and so I felt like I have to make a move here, and so that was growing. And while I was working at BCG on the weekends, in the last couple months or so, on the weekends, I would meet one or two other people that were also interested in doing this and starting up in the climate tech space. And we knew that there was a law coming supporting solar power supply for multifamily housing. So we had our eyes set on that real estate multifamily sector because we felt, okay, all those solar systems on single family houses, on farms in the landscape, but nothing in the city on those multifamily houses. And so that's where we want to start, and we want to find a way to scale that. And then I was completely hooked and on fire, but the other people that I conceptualized EINHUNDERT with found it hard to make the jump, out of high-paid, stable consulting environments. But I was determined on doing it anyways. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to find a co-founder that I don't know yet. And through my connections at Aachen University, where I had done my PhD, I came in contact with Markus Reinhold. We had a very good chemistry. He decided to scale down to part-time in his existing job, and we tested this, and it worked well. And then he joined the ship.
How long did it take you between what's the timeline between the first months ideating the company with the people who were not part of it, and then finding Marcus and then incorporating the company?
It should have taken me longer. That's an advice I would give. I had a good pre-education because I knew this space really well. I had worked in that space quite in detail as well. So I had quite a confidence, but maybe a bit too much, because I think taking your time to really understand what it is that you want to offer and doing more iterations also with potential customers would have maybe saved us some time after founding until it grows. So you can maybe spend less money and time by investing a bit more in your pre-research. I started, let's say, realistically, I think in the fall of 16, October 16 maybe. That's when we were sitting down on weekends. Could have been a bit earlier. I'm not 100% sure. And over the winter, and I decided to cancel my employment and started working full-time on this in February. I was still on the payroll. I could take some leftover month that I can take, some leave months. And then the official founding was end of May. And so I would say overall a bit more than half a year from, okay, I want to do this. Let's think about this to EINHUNDERT is the company.
You are mentioning already some of the advices you sent me, so I think it's a perfect jump to talk about that, because it's thank you very much for sending me this a list of do's and don'ts. Actually, it's a lot of it's only do's, but it's great. That were on the topic. I asked you to focus on the topic of how to optimize and develop a new energy solution in the B2B real estate market. So the first tip or advice you sent me was focus on a very specific use case that can be bought and used immediately. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it speaks a bit also to that point I alluded to. I mean, the one thing is you have to know about yourself and also your co-founders. What is your mindset? Are you driven by a certain technology, or a certain vision, like I want to fight climate change? If you understand that about yourself, you could say, hey, that's great. I have a great motivation, but I probably have a very poor understanding of what the actual opportunity really is. What is really the product that I can start with that a landlord, let's say a big company, a big real estate company, whoever that is, wants to buy now. And you need to make sure that you do enough research, interviewing, to understand what is something that I can start with, that I can also implement in a fairly short time, that I can find first customers with. And I think that's something that is worth spending quite a bit of time on, because it saves you a lot of time later when you already maybe have 10 or 15 or 20 people, and you maneuver a bit because you maybe have some learnings that, it's always easy to say in hindsight, you should have done differently, but where you say, okay, maybe I could have understood this early on in the process.
So what was your process in that case? You mentioned interviews. Did you use surveys, or were you more on the design, user research interviews, where it was in-depth interviews? And how many of them have you done?
It's a mix. I think the one is the direct customer feedback for a sector like ours. The other important input is, at the end of the day, also regulation and things that are coming up that are just mandatory. So if if you know the real estate companies will have to do exactly this and that, they will need a solution for exactly this and that. So one thing is really to understand what will the laws and the trends lead them to that they maybe may not be able to define and tell you in an interview right now. So you have to do that on your own. And then the other thing is interviews. So we had, at that point, we made a little bit of a shift or reshaping of our product logic in 2020. And at that point, we already had more than 10 larger customers. So we used interviews, multi-stage interviews with them as well, and learnings that we had. So that's something that's, of course, a bit harder to do when they're not your customers yet. But that was more of a refining process. In the beginning, what I did is I found my first customer through my network. And a landlord, she actually owner of a number of buildings, and I knew she was second generation owner. She was interested in having innovative solutions for her buildings. And then I really used in-depth interviews to have a first hypothesis of how it needs to be structured, what the pitfalls are. And I think that is a point where, based on, I would realistically say, this in-depth work and then like 4 or 5 others, we started. And I think we should have done some more pre-research everything we did was generally right, but it's not specific enough. How exactly is the pricing? What is exactly the pricing model? What is the minimum version that they need and versus what they can wait with. So more these detailed questions that help you structure your initial product a bit more specifically.
Okay, so that's a bit, I guess you can iterate a bit on that, but that's a bit included in your second advice, which is be extremely precise about the customer's pain point and what this means for the product design. So maybe you can iterate a bit on that, or maybe like the question I can ask you is like, what kind of questions do you ask the customer to find out these things without, being biased, or to be able to know that it is really what they want to be developed?
Yeah, it's super hard. And at the end, of course, the vision, and that's why, there are a lot of methodologies that can be deployed. I think still at the end of the day, you also, from an understanding of the industry and also personality of founders, you need to also have a vision. Great entrepreneurs somehow have that, and they don't always, I think, directly get that from the customers. They get that from things they observe, and then a clear vision of where this will lead to. And they can sometimes be wrong and be right. But we have one thing, of course. It's a very obvious one. You can have some type of mock-ups, and if your product is not just software, a mock-up often is a presentation or a pitch where you offer the product and just see if they buy it. It doesn't have to be there, right? So you need to be able to deliver it in a certain time frame. But that's number one. You make a presentation of your value proposition, and you go to multiple potential customers, and you see what they jump to and what they don't. And for us, our customers put a lot of skin in the game. They're typically wealthy because these are companies that have many buildings, have high earnings, and then they need to invest multiple €1,000s per building to install solar. They need to trust us with a long-term contract. So if they buy it, that's the best proof. Yeah, or if they audit, that's the best proof.
Is it how you got your first customer? You basically made a presentation of what is it you're going to sell, and then she said, "Okay, I'm in." Exactly,
yeah. And then of course the lengthy process was the whole contract thing, because you make a B2B contract, a long running contract per building. So that was a second step. But yeah, we pitched the concept to her and then to others, and we iterated that, and then she bought it. Somebody else bought it. That was the first customer that we had not known at all. That's I think an important indication. Do you get people who don't know you to buy it? And it sounds really simple, but at the end of the day, it's just with investors, with customers, you have to pitch it. You have to pitch features. You shouldn't lie in the sense that you just make something up. But when you have alternatives, you can say, okay, to this group of leads, I will pitch it in this way, and to this group of leads, I will pitch it in that way. Different pricing model, for instance, different contract length, and then I will see what the feedback is. But in the B2B space, you can only test so much, because your sample size is limited. So you cannot test 100 variables, right? So you have to go for 2 or 3 setups, and those have to somehow come from your experience and your view of the market, because you won't be able to test all these variables individually. It's just, you can't ask enough people and you lose your customer base.
Dear entrepreneurs, I make a 1 minute, 20 seconds break for an important announcement. I get a lot of positive feedback about this podcast, and I'm really happy I started it. But I know there is one thing wrong about it. For you, entrepreneurs out there like me, your time is limited. You love to learn, but you don't always have the time to listen to the long episode of this podcast. So I decided to create a best-of series with a special format. 10 audio episodes between 3 to 10 minutes, shorter than a coffee break. There are only hands-on advice shared in this podcast about, for example, how many times you should iterate to create the right product before giving up, how to find and pitch investors, how to inspire and build a thriving team, how to win clients when you have an environmental mission, how to sell your first paid pilots to big corporates, or how to prepare and to get a TED Talk. In total, this is 12 hours, 50 minutes of interviews I have condensed in 10 audio episodes of less than 10 minutes. These best-of episodes are an exclusive bonus for the members of my newsletter, so if you want to receive them for free, go to my website, gtimpact.com, or find the link in the description of this episode, and sign up to receive the full series of best-of episodes to enjoy every time you have 10 minutes and you want to learn something about growing your business and having a greater positive impact on this planet. So I leave you here. Enjoy the rest of this episode. Yeah, very good point. The third tip was software only does not really work yet. You mean here in that case in the energy sector? So can you explain a bit more about this one?
I think that is a conviction that I have. Energy sector is maybe a bit too broad, but let's say the distributed energy. So where you talk about solar and battery, and because software as a service works only on an existing asset stack, right? Sounds super theoretical, but if you have Slack or if you have Zoom, why does it work? Well, because the internet cables are there and everybody has a computer. That's the precondition. If it wasn't there, somebody has to bring it there, and then you can come with Zoom, and then you can come with Slack. But it first has to be brought there. And when you talk about the energy transition and you talk about distributed energy like solar and battery and so on, in multifamily housings, it's just not there yet. So if you then come up with a software as a service solution, you can do a few things. You can have some analytics tools. How do I assess my building portfolio? How can I do this and that? But at the end of the day, the challenge for these companies, real estate companies, and also homeowners today is putting those technologies in the buildings. And they need somebody to help them all the way. And part of that all the way means somebody has to go to these buildings and check out what's in the basement. Somebody has to install something, and hardware has to be bought. And so at the end of the day, the solution is always a mix of software, hardware, services to make it a reality. Doesn't mean you have to do everything on your own. I think that's a big error. We also started doing way too much on our own, which we then cannot develop to quality. But you need to work in partnerships, and you have to have an ecosystem that at the end of the day solves the total problem. Whereas if you already had solar everywhere, every multifamily house, you have a solar system and smart meters, of course, then that's the next generation of entrepreneurs, but that's 10, 15 years from now. They can come with SaaS offerings to make it more efficient or to use it a bit differently. We're trying to combine it because we believe that creates also a bigger lock-in and a long-term story for our company. But it means you cannot grow as fast because the asset base is not yet there. And I think VCs always come from the mindset, at least if they're not impact or clean tech VCs, they come from the mindset, I would love software only. But software always means there's a hardware reality already that you can apply your software to.
And how you mentioned the one of the mistake you made, or you tried to do it too much on your own at the beginning. So what did you partner for what did you outsource? Not really outsourcing in that case, but what is the thing that you've partnered with, and that what is a mistake you've done when you said you've done too much on your own at the beginning?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is the solar systems. So very few multifamily housings today have solar systems. So typically when a real estate company approaches us and they say, we want to roll out solar power supply for our users, what we bring really as a strength to the table is doing the smart metering, tracking the consumption, the production, doing all the invoicing, all the servicing. That's us with our platform and our processes. But we're not so strong at actually, purchasing solar modules from the wholesale market and having installers that do this. So we worked with partners from the beginning to do this hardware solar part, but we still were, the general contract partner for the real estate company. So we would actually purchase the hardware and the installation from partners and sell it on to the real estate companies. And then we learned, and that's something we have changed over the course of 2020, we don't really create that much value by doing this. Real estate companies are really accustomed to working with installation partners. They do it every day. When it comes to the roof, the heating, they already have a big network. And so what is really our value by being in between, rather than just recommending solar installers to our real estate customers that they can directly negotiate the prices. And we just come in when the solar system is ordered and installed. And that was one key change where we said, look, we're not on top of our smart metering and software and process expertise. We cannot also right now build up the solar installation expertise. And we don't need to be in the way between solar installing companies and our customers.
So you are, in that case, you are not buying these hardware anymore. You work with a partner who is actually like installing them, but you can help to finance, you can help the landlords of the tenants to finance this installation.
Yes and no. We have a financing fund next to EINHUNDERT, which is built to finance solar systems. And we've done that already in a 6-figure range. And there are 2 major projects that would bring it over the 1 million funding range as well. But that was also very important learning that we made also, I would think, in 2019, that most real estate companies sit on quite a bit of cash and they like to invest and they also like to have full control of everything that is in and around their buildings. So us financing and owning the systems on their roofs isn't really what they're looking for, at least not the customers we're working with right now, because we're working really now with the biggest real estate companies in Germany. So we're working with the big shots. So that's why we said, look, we're looking at your building portfolio together. We make a roadmap of what you want to roll out. And then here's the list of solar partners that you can work with. They buy it from them. They own it. They finance it. And they just let us know when it's installed. And then we are the operators, if you want. And that is a shift in the value or a split in the value chain between the customers and us, which leaves a lot of value also for our customers because they also want to earn money on this business model. And which makes it easier for us to focus on the things that we're really good at.
That brings me down to the fourth advice that you said, because you're talking about personas and subsegments. You said pin down your personas and subsegments early.
Yes, and that's exactly it. I mean, we've now come up with these product packages, and they work extremely well, even though as we speak right now, the website is not even yet live, and technically speaking, nobody by now knows about it, but it's picked up so much traction via referrals from existing customers to other real estate companies. And this is how we really knew now we have the product market fit. And I think I came into this EINHUNDERT experience, and also my co-founder, we knew quite a bit about energy, and I knew quite a bit about renewable energy and the technicalities of our business, but we were new to the real estate world. And I think we had a too general way of structuring it. I mean, yes, you have companies that are developing buildings, then you have owners, and then you have facility managers. But you really have to understand, companies that own more than 10,000 housing units are super different from, privately owned, from public, communal, publicly owned. So all these differences, you really have to play them out and understand what drives their pain points. And for us, what we understood is, as of now, our customers are the larger real estate companies because they have much more pressure to bring their CO2 down. They're either on the stock exchange and their investors are demanding it, or they even belong to a city. In Berlin, for instance, you have about 6 landlord companies that are part actually of the city of Berlin. And the city of Berlin says, we want to become the solar city Berlin. So there's a lot of pressure. And so these larger real estate companies that belong to the local governments or that belong to private investors have much more pressure than smaller, family-owned real estate companies, for instance. And so that's why we focus on this big segment. And also we have much more leverage because they have bigger portfolios and they want to have a more ambitious roadmap.
But I guess the competition for these big fish is really, really high.
Yes. I think our positioning now with what we offer is quite unique because it enables them to somehow do it on their own, towards the residents while still relying on us for the majority of the work to be done. And that's because it's more than software. That's an important point. We're not just offering them software, we're also helping them with the services around it, which they need and like a lot. So they don't have to build over years the experience and the capacities internally. So our positioning is good. I think the question is more, we don't really compete so much with other companies now. We compete more with the question of how fast do they want to scale this? How does it rank against other initiatives in those big companies? Because you always have to prioritize this to the executive level. And that's where really Fridays for Future and all these new laws have changed so much, because now the pressure is on, and that helps us quite a bit. And we're happy that we're working with customers who are, really taking a very close look. They look at the business case. They have their own financial models for this. So you don't get away with anything that's not working, not good, but that helps us also shape an excellent offering. And it's also something that speaks to, our personalities also as founders and a team. I think we're much more B2B type of people, more consultant oriented than like a mass market type of team.
And that's good to see then, your approach was fine when you said that now you really know that you found product market fit, because you reached that point where after tackling several, you had a very already, as you said, a pretty good strategy to start with, and you pinned it down quite niche, but you still had a few customer persona, and now when you finally find something that starts to grow just by word of mouth very, very quickly, that's basically that's where your sweet spot is.
Exactly. So once we decided to open our, service-based offering, the MieterStrom Active, once we decided that to open it for new customers, even though it's not on the website and not public yet, it just started. Our existing 2 customers in that space, they started suggesting us, and that's just been the middle of 2020. And now I think we have a pipeline of about 30, 35 major accounts, the biggest real estate companies, the biggest utilities in Germany that want to use this solution. And even though you can't even see it on the website. And so that's when you've hit a spot that kind of matches with what they want. And then you have so many conversations on the top level with these people, and you see it's what exactly they need and that it really speaks. And so we are extremely confident now. And that's the time when we say, now we need to be in attack mode because we really understood that what we do is what they want. And now it's all about making sure everybody knows about it and making sure we can deliver it at scale as well.
That's great. It's perfect. That's perfect also to talk about the next point, which is break your product down to manage complexity.
Yeah. So I think some part is what we talked about already, which is the solar and the hardware part. I think we're really good in the smart meter space. We're not solar installers on our own, and we understood, okay, we don't need to move much deeper. We're good at managing solar systems. We're good at operating them, but the installation part, leave that to the partners. Let the partners work with our customers. So that's one key example, I would say. But it goes further than that. I mean, every feature that you offer always also brings a responsibility to deliver that feature. And I think so you need to carefully think about the components and understand what it really. We found ourselves offering like 2 or 3 aspects of our offering that at the end of the day didn't matter so much to the customers. And so it's a discipline exercise, which I find extremely hard. And also I think many in our team who are really engineering driven, leave it out, just kill it, and dare to jump into saying also no. Also, not only with features, but also with segments. We have a lot of so-called VEGs calling us. So these are multifamily housings that don't belong to one company, which rents out the apartments, but these are multifamily housings where each apartment is owned by the family or whoever lives there, or they rent it out to somebody else. So you have not one decision maker for the building, but you have like 10 or 20. They call us a lot, but then typically it's just the owner of one apartment of 10. And that means even if they're really convinced, you have to convince the other 9. So that's, for instance, something where we generally say, sorry, not available. And these kinds of decisions you have to make. At some point, it sounds a bit like, oh my God, but we have a lead here. But you have to make these hard cuts, and also when it comes to the features.
And the last tip you sent was be experienced, which is a tip, but so a precondition maybe. But maybe you can share your experience of the real estate market, I guess, here.
Yeah, I think, or you could put it differently, gain experience. I kind of contradict myself because, as I mentioned, with the real estate market, I was not so experienced, but very experienced when it comes to the energy side. And even though our customers are in the real estate space, at the end of the day, we have an energy solution that we offer. And I think a lot of the climate tech sectors, not all of them, but many of them are very complex. I think it can be really overwhelming to deal with this kind of complexity and see through it and structure the way to like grow your product. And so starting with B2B real estate and energy solution is probably at the intersection of complex and challenging customer segment and complex and challenging solution. And I think it might not be the best way for somebody who just graduated, for instance, to say, I go in that space. You might want to work in that industry, have a network, come in, running already. Rather than starting from scratch, or maybe just start with like a solution which is more B2C oriented, or which is a bit lighter, I would say, in terms of the value chain that you do, because the more value chain you cover, the bigger your customers, the more critical decisions you have to make at any time, and the more expertise is needed to get it going.
Yes. What is the background of your co-founder, by the way? Because you are the CEO and you have a business background focused on energy.
He's an engineer from Aachen University, mechanical engineer focused on product development and renewable energies. So he is the technical counterpart, and he had also done some work in development and engineering projects also internationally. And so I think he's very strong methodically and on the operations part, and so. That was a really good match. Also, I'm more like, I think I'm driving, I'm pushing the vision, I'm pushing people. I'm a very good person to start new stuff. I'm probably not the best to finish it. I think he's more like the finisher who makes sure that, things run diligently and there's a process for it. So I guess that's how it works.
And it was also his first venture, his first entrepreneur project as well?
Yeah, for both of us. And that you have to understand that makes things harder. So not so much necessarily from the product itself, but then a lot of things around it. How do I do this? How do I do that? Growing the team, doing all these kinds of stuff. It helps to have an entrepreneur on board when you have a new venture, if you have the luxury to have one or meet one. I think where it helps most is probably fundraising. Because we have a lot of this mentality also in the investment scene where if somebody already did something once, which was somewhat successful, let's say, had an exit or whatever, there's an automatic boost in trust that the next thing will also work. And so it's much easier to get capital if you've already done something. And it makes also sense, I guess, because the risk of making some mistakes is just a bit lower, of course. And in Germany, I think it plays a huge role in the investment scene.
Yes, because as we know, the market is pretty conservative, and I think probably even more right now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for all these tips. They are very, very useful. One thing I wanted to ask you to get back to before we finish with the usual questions is, you mentioned you are like doing a lot of effort to have like part-timers, and you like to work with part-timers. I had two questions regarding that. Was like, did you have some people in the core co-founding team or in the very first employees that you employed part-time? And if so, how did you manage that in terms of equities, for example? And do you have any like secret on how you manage your part-timers in terms whatever of like contracts, but also schedule and organizations, meetings and everything to get them involved and motivated?
It's not always easy. I mean, in the beginning, definitely. I mean, even my co-founder, when he joined initially, it was part-time because he was still in his old job. So the first month it was part-time. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, we even did it in a freelance logic because we said, okay, let's start. You have another job.
So that's something I'm very interested about, because I'm in a similar situation right now. So you started with them as a freelancing part, saying like, hey, I'm working full time because you can't. So like in that case, you just count the hours and agreed that you'll pay them after, or you pay them every month as a normal freelancer at the beginning?
No, he would have. I'm not sure when he actually sent his invoice and asked to be paid, but I think that was actually at the end. But generally, the deal was every month I think he had 2 days. I'm not 100% sure, 2 or 3 days available, and he committed in his other job. He's to not just leave there, and so there was a freelance contract. And once we both figured out we really click, personal level and also competence wise, then he joined ship and worked full time. So at that point, then it was both founders full time, and that's also how we decided to make the arrangements with equity and options and whatever. Even though also that has changed over time. So because I first started everything, I had also done the initial payments, and my family was also invested. So it was, we started very asymmetrically, and over time we adjusted more and more. But when it comes to the team overall, one thing that's also striking, if you look at, I'm not sure about other countries, but the German entrepreneurial scene, it's not diversified at all. The founding teams always look the same, and then the whole team also. And so, being a parent of myself, also my co-founder now being a parent, we wanted to make sure that we make it possible for men, but also women who are parents, and also people in other circumstances, who are super talented, but maybe have another interest. So we to somehow combine that and find a way. It's not always easy. Finding meetings and sometimes challenging, but like our head of sales works 80%. Our head of account management used to work 80%. He now stepped up. And our product lead went from 60 now to 80%, mother of 3. So all these things, we make possible. We find individual arrangements while trying to make sure that, it somehow fits in a schedule that we can make it possible. But it gives us access to superior talent. That's the bottom line, and it makes people not leave. It's that simple. I can tell everybody you work 100% now, but if it just doesn't fit with their reality, then they will leave or be frustrated. So making it possible might mean some sacrifices, in your operational scheduling, but I think you benefit double and triple by the talent that you get and the satisfaction. And we just don't have any churn of people that we want to have on board. We don't have any churn at all so far, and knock on wood. But that's extremely critical in a phase like this. And on top of that, we also work a lot with students. We have the RWTH Aachen, super good university for renewable energy and for computer engineering. We have the TH Köln, the technical university. We get outstanding talent. We have working students who do just phenomenal jobs. And that's why we standardized our processes so much that somebody can come in for a day, do work, get out, and somebody else can continue that, workflow. You have to standardize your processes a lot.
And so by standardizing these processes, you manage to have the people respecting as well the 80% time, for example, or are they sometimes on a flexible schedule that like they work just more, they can kick in and work more when needed to meet the deadlines?
Yeah, but that has to be, that has to be aligned with. So what we don't really want also managing costs is, we're not saying, yeah, just work and then let us know how much it was. So that's not, so we have an agreed frame. Sometimes it's a bit more. And we say, look, if it was a bit more, talk to us. First of all, let's talk upfront if it will be more. But if it turns out to be more, we just had to pull something through. Let us know, and then you take a day off or something like that. Yeah. But we count on people not, tracking their hours maliciously, but rather just talking to their team lead when they see they come into a bottleneck.
Yeah, that's great to know. I went into the same situation with my previous company as well, where I initiated the flexible schedule of people could work from 32 to 40 hours, which was great, but comes with the cons that you just mentioned, that then people start to count all the hours and doing the payrolls at the end of the month was a very difficult task. So if I had to do it again, I would probably go towards your direction, because I think what you said is critical. By being flexible, by offering flexibility of work, you get more talent, and you have people happy in their work.
Exactly.
But it's often more difficult than just having the typical contracts, or the worst companies doing, okay, you work 40 hours and actually you work 50.
Yeah.
And they do that with every employee.
I completely agree. And I think it doesn't always work for every role, but we're trying to make it possible. I think on the founder level, it's probably more challenging if you have that, because if you have a situation where, like, if at least you need to have the same understanding. Honestly, I'm not sure how much I'm working, but it will be in the range of typically, 60, 70 hours probably. And if you have then somebody is tracking literally the hours, and the other person, has the idea of, going wherever it takes. And then, then I think it will be difficult. So that's, I think, important that you have a similar understanding. And make sure that there are no hidden frustrations in the founders team. So that was also really good when we found our collaboration, that we had a similar understanding of, try to make everything possible. We are really driven when we feel that, okay, this is too much. I have, like, my daughters here with Corona now, sometimes kindergarten closed, no problem, let's rearrange. But you need to have the feeling that it balances out over time.
Thank you for the feedback and the comment. I think it's a very good point. Switching to the last part of this interview, the usual questions. Which book would you recommend entrepreneurs like you to read? Or let's say, what is one of the last books you read that you would recommend others?
You're tapping into a huge weakness, because I have to say that my reading habits have worsened a lot, especially with the job and fatherhood. But right now I'm reading the Obama book, which inspires me a lot. It's not per se an entrepreneur's book, but I just love it because it gives you really deep insight into the thinking of somebody who has to, first of all, combine private life and a really responsible job, and also how to make decisions. So that's I think it's a really cool book, even though I haven't finished it yet. So on the more like entrepreneurial side, if you want, or like factual books, very early on, I think my father, when I was like 14, 15, I think my father gave me the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So that was a cool book back then. Recently, I liked 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel. It helped me to understand a bit better also the investor's mindset. Let me think. What did I have? I'm trying to think of an interesting book.
But the Obama one is it's the second time in a week that somebody recommends it to me.
The Obama one?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, it's also selling really well now, but it is really good. Other than that, when I read, to be honest, I do read on business. I read on Medium and stuff. Lean Startup is cool, but I try to also read political stuff and more historical stuff to get a bit of a wider, sense. I'm also really interested in politics and in income equality and stuff like that. So Why Nations Fail was one of my favorite books that I've read over the last 24 months. Especially when you have a background, like my father said, from Haiti. So stuff like that is interesting to me as well. And I think you need to, if you You will think so much about your business. You will talk to so many people. For me, when I find the time to read, especially at night, I try to also use it as a method to take me away from business a bit.
On that topic, I'm reading Humankind now, which is very, very interesting as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read. Do you know it?
I don't know. I haven't read it yet. No.
You've probably heard about Harari and *Sapiens*.
I read *Sapiens*. That was great. Yeah.
The thing is, like, when Harari is like having a pretty negative opinion of the humankind, here the author is actually, and with a very scientific approach and very detailed, with a lot of resources, analyzing the whole past of the humankind to show that actually we're not that bad and we will find solutions. And I'm myself a very pessimist. I mean, optimist in a way that, like, I'm always in a positive mood and I always try to look at the bright side of things. But I'm pretty pessimistic about the future of the humankind because of how the people in power actually, how they usually care about only their power and the money. But this book is slowly starting to change my mind.
Okay, cool. That's a big impact.
Yeah, it's a very, very good one. I put the resources in. It was my Christmas gift, and I really enjoy it.
Well, that sounds interesting. Yeah, generally, I think beyond business, just as a call to action from that I like to share is just, I think we all need to be extremely political. I think if you look at, okay, I'm pessimistic about the future. How will we manage climate change? Will we even manage Corona? Everything in between. I tend to be also a bit pessimistic, pessimistic about how we can change. But it's also a result of the fact which resources you pour into. You know, I wouldn't expect EINHUNDERT to become a success if I was working with a mediocre team. So, and I think we expect. I'm not generally judging. I know that there are a lot of bright people in politics, but I think overall, as a citizen, we're kind of leaving like super complex politics to maybe not the top talent. And I think that's important, even when you're a founder and super busy. But I think the top talent has to engage in political processes because everything is so challenging that the politics and, you know, the administration, governments, they need quality people to get engaged. And that's something that I would love to see more, because then you have a bigger chance also, besides business, to also have, you know, more progressive political agenda become a reality.
And to be able to find, as you mentioned it before, if you want to be able to be aware of trends, it's not only about business, it's about the whole, like, you know, system thinking. That's why system thinking is becoming so important right now, because you need to be aware of the whole system to be able to have an influence and to be visionary, if you want to be visionary.
Absolutely. And after all, I mean, people are saying different things, but Fridays for Future, you know, Greta and Luise Neubauer and all this movement already has had incredible impact, you know, on where we're going right now. Both companies, CEOs who are mothers or fathers of, you know, kids demonstrating the political changes. So that was, to me, a huge motivator to see, first of all, how motivated and how progressive the youth is, and also to see what impact this has had already, even on what we're doing and how our demand is increasing. So I think there's a lot that can be done.
Yeah, and I agree too. And I'm very positive about the new generation. And it's funny because you are the second one. Like, I mean, Robert Shrimp from Solar for Schools also, like, insisted so much on how much, like, he literally said it, like, his company would not be here with the success he has without Solar for Schools, not Solar for Schools, without Fridays for Future.
Exactly, and I think it's a time game. The question is, how much time do we have? You know, I'm arguing with my parents or other people in that age category about, you know, trying to reduce meat, you know, and stuff. But it's what they've been used to. And then if you look at the younger generation, I don't know the statistics, but I don't know, a large percentage are vegetarians already, but they're not making the politics right now, right? The politics is made by our parents' generation. So I think we have to engage in the politics. But it's coming. The question is just, is it coming early enough? So
yeah, let's hope we aim at, like, I think Norway who was like four women political leaders under 35 or under 40 for the country. let's move to the next question, because I think we can talk a lot about politics. Let's stick to the topic of entrepreneurship. You said you don't have a lot of time for books, but or at least you don't use that time for business books. But do you have any training, podcast, blogs, or influencers you'd recommend to entrepreneurs and people growing a startup to with a sustainable goal to follow?
Yeah, for sure. My focus is right now a lot on B2B sales and B2B marketing. So I have a couple there that I can also share later. I have to actually pick them out. But one thing that has, that I've been hearing consistently over the years is the Energy Gang, which is a podcast from Green Tech Media from the US, talking about
the Energy Gain or Game
Gang, like
Gang, okay.
Yeah, which is a really cool podcast about major trends, a bit US focused, but typically has a global implication. They also have a spin-off called The Interchange, so I like those a lot, talking to really cool founders. I've discovered a podcast that I like a lot. I think it's from a Scandinavian clean energy consultant guy, which is Leaders in Clean Tech, talking to a number of really cool decision makers in the clean tech space. So that's one I could recommend. And then I'm also, for instance, sometimes for lunch, I like go jogging, put the kids in the trolley, go jogging, put on a podcast. I'm usually searching more for like topics. I'm like, okay, I want to learn on account-based marketing. And then I just type it in and I find different stuff. So that's sounds super general, but I'm more topic-oriented person, and then look, okay, which podcast do I like? And again, going back, I know it's not so much business, but I think you need to know about what's going on. So it's in German, but I'm from Handelsblatt, which is a German important economic paper. They have quite a number of good podcasts that I like, and I listen to Global Chances every time it comes out. It gives more like a larger economic background and helps you also understand where it's going and things are going. And
Global Chances.
Yeah. And if you're a founder, how do you want to plan 2021 if you don't have an idea of, how will Corona, nobody knows how exactly it will pan out, but also what will be the impact on the overall economic situation. It's very likely that it will affect your business plan execution as well.
Yes, very good point. The last question I would ask you is tell us one thing about you that I wouldn't be able to find out online.
Couple of things, I guess. I would say just about interest. First of all, I love sports. I love especially basketball. That used to be my sport. Now I've went more to tennis in last year because it was still allowed, and I really come to enjoy it a lot. But I used to, when I was young, I used to do a lot of music, especially hip hop music, and was engaged in producing, making beats. So that's still a passion, like music overall, and I'm not mixing or doing anything like this right now. But I have this boombox here at home. From when I go to the shower to whatever I do, it typically walks with me. Bring the kids to sleep. You always have the boombox and some type of music on. So that's especially in times when you have to stay at home a lot. It's really what fuels me.
That's a nice fun fact. I think I have in one of the last questions, because I'm reading through my questions. One last one maybe would be, which error have you made in the past that you wouldn't commit again if you had to start over now?
Yeah, regarding the company, I think on an operational level, there are so many. It's very hard to say. On a positive side, I would say I'm fairly decision happy, and I think you have to be if you start a company. I think at least for the early first year, we should have been a bit more conservative in hiring decisions. Keep the cash burn a bit lower. Also understand better what it really is that you need in terms of also, team. So I think now it doesn't really matter, but I think we could have been a bit more, smaller.
Higher, less, faster.
Yeah. Yes. At least in the beginning. I think we've got it to a good level now, but that's
you reach a size where like it matters less when you grow a bit too fast regarding cash and everything, I guess.
Yeah, regarding cash, I mean, it still matters a lot, but yeah, people come into a structure. Maybe you expect still great things from them, but you don't expect them to move so much in a super great uncertainty and to provide extra structure. And I think that's why it's good to have a founder team of 2, but maybe even 3. So you can manage more topics in the founder team before you look for others to provide that.
Ernesto, thank you very much. We went through everything I wanted to ask you. I've learned a lot of things today. So thank you very much for sharing your experience and all these advice with us. I wish you all the best. I will put all the links of the books and the references we mentioned in the page of the episode online. And by the time this podcast will be online, you'll have your new website launch. So you have this is your last word to our audience. If you want to share where they can find you, the website, on LinkedIn, anything you want to share. If you are hiring, you're looking for more investors, even though you just closed the crowdfunding round. But it's your time now to share whatever you want to share.
Well, yeah, first, thanks a lot. Really cool talk. Had a lot of fun. I hope everybody who hears it will enjoy it as well and not be bored. Yeah, I mean, you can reach me. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just enter my name, Ernesto and Garnier, like the shampoo. You will find me there. Please connect. Send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm there frequently. So if you have anything from investment interest, looking for a new job, we are hiring. I think we'll have about 15, 20 new people on board probably this year. So reach out. We're actually probably already adding really 1 or 2 high-profile positions this year. So just connect. And otherwise, you find us on einhundert.de. So einhundert as the word, the German word, and check out our product. And yeah, just let me know if you're interested and want to talk.
Thank you very much, Ernesto. I wish you all the best in 2021, and hopefully we'll meet soon in Berlin.
Yes, I really do hope that will be possible soon. And thanks a lot, and good luck and success also to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you like this podcast, there are 2 things you can do that would mean the world to me. The first thing is to sign up for the podcast newsletter. That way you will be notified of the new episodes, but you will also get a summary of the learnings at the end of every season. Plus, for each episode, you will get the resources and the list of do's and don'ts that every guest shares with me. And finally, you will also get the opportunity to ask our future guests 1 question in advance. You can sign up for this newsletter on gtimpact.com. The second thing you can do to be super helpful is to recommend this podcast. For that, you can write a review on Apple Podcasts and share the podcast with your friends, other entrepreneurs, and people trying to build a sustainable future. That way, we can all learn together and work on a brighter future for us, our children, and our planet. Thank you very much, and see you next week for the next episode. Have a nice day.